Welcome to Media Context. Every week we're going to be assembling a cast of smart and informed humans to explore a single topic from the wider media world. This week we'll be digging into pilots and launches, when to hit go on a new YouTube channel or format. I'm joined this week by Alex Kempner. He co-founded and runs Object with his business partner Bart. They create original digital entertainment for brands like Foot Asylum and Boohoo Man. For publishers, broadcasters like the BBC and Channel 4, and for talent, they recently launched their owned and operated network of channels. Also joined by Tom Martin, the CEO and head of acquisitions for Content Rocket, a digital distribution company built around a network of movie channels on YouTube. Previously, he built the YouTube networks for both BBC Studios and Endemol Shine before consulting with some of the world's biggest media brands. And as you can see, he's a prior podcaster, an expert, and book author in this space. Lovely microphone, lovely YouTube certificates there, Tom. And lastly, joined by Emily Barwise. Emily's a BBC veteran. She's also ex-Fremantle. She's now a digital consultant. She's got over 14 years of experience shaping digital strategy for iconic global brands like Lego, Bluey, Hey Duggee, and Doctor Who. And she's helped many of those brands thrive on YouTube and social media. Hi, guys.
You look really
Hi.
young, Emily, for having 40 years of experience, I must say.
40, I know, I'm not a day over 70.
Yeah, you're looking good. I think it does bring up a good point, though, because I always, I've been working on YouTube since 2012, and I say, like, a year on YouTube is like dog years. So,
Yeah.
like, 15 years on YouTube is like 100 human years. So, yeah, you probably have got 40 years of experience.
100%. I'm the old lady from Titanic. That is me.
Did I not enunciate my 14 clearly enough?
It's fine.
Right, so framing up, in recent years we've seen more and more of a focus on launching and building sustainable formats on YouTube. Some of us have been doing this for over a decade already, but we're seeing broadcasters and traditional production companies, brands and legacy media owners all putting a renewed focus on their digital audiences as they see audiences move from linear and legacy media into that digital space and the revenues moving alongside them. And something I think that has meant is that there are fewer of those mediators like commissioners who are helping to make the choices of when something's ready, and people are having to greenlight themselves. So to kick us off, I'd love to hear some opening positions on where you are in that landscape and perhaps the main thing you see going wrong or a provocation that you'd like to give us.
I think what you should do before you even start is think about the content and what you want your end goal to be. Is it monetization? Are you promoting a product? Is it therefore sales? Or are you building brand awareness and inviting people into your community? You got to think about, does the content that you are pulling together or have pulled together, does that match up with the end result that you're intending for the channel? And there's considerations that you can bear in mind for that, but it's really making sure that that is all aligned.
Yeah, well, I completely agree with Emily as half of my response, which is, can you answer why? Why are you launching the channel? Because I think as soon as you've got that answer, you're probably ready to go, at least with the sort of like what you're going to make or what you're going to publish. And then the second half of my answer is when you've got enough resource to commit to 6 months. And that's a very sort of practical side of it, because doing it for a month, doing it for 2 months, you're not really going to get far, because it can take time. So yeah, one is answer that big question that becomes your North Star with the why, and then give yourself some runway. And 6 months is a fairly arbitrary, but let's go with that.
Yeah, from my point of view, I sadly agree with both, because my role in this panel going forward is to be the contrarian arsehole that disagrees with everyone, but I cannot disagree with what both of these guys have said. Totally agree. So for me, yeah, certainly to focus on the more technical, like if you've got an existing channel and you want to test out a new format, to me that's a lot more valuable, because you have an audience, the Foot Asylum channel or the Sidemen or whoever, whatever it is, right? If you've already got 1 million subscribers and a certain amount of traffic, that is going to allow you to get some real feedback, coming from the corporate world, where it's like, okay, we've invented this kids IP and we want to launch a YouTube channel. I'm like, well, have you got at least 20 weeks worth of content to be able to get some kind of feedback. And even then, like, what feedback are you going to get when you're publishing to essentially tumbleweeds from day one? So starting from like 0 with no brand awareness, a totally new brand, is a real tough ask. So at the very least, like Alex said, you're going to need 20 weeks worth of stuff.
It's a perennial question I'm faced as I move around, is people that have all of the skills, but their entire business model is built around being commissioned, using that money to create the content, and then being commissioned again. And it's somebody else's job to look after landing the audience and landing the launch. And I think that is the biggest step, the gap in both psychology but also finance that people are facing.
Yeah, and I think as well the movement of kind of traditional TV talent to like a digital first space is probably a harsh one, because you've got people with TV budgets and TV resource or experience of those two things, and someone to do your risk assessment and someone to do your compliance and all of this, and it's like, well, we got 500 quid to make an episode. How do we do it and appeal to a totally different audience with a totally visual language than is on TV? So yeah, probably quite a tough leap for a lot of people that are from a background in which they have to go to a commissioner.
Yeah. Emily, any build on that? Have you ever been part of launching something from scratch?
Yes, and completely agree with Tom. Like, if you're starting from 0, it's really, really tricky. There are workarounds you can do to prevent that from happening, because, the YouTube algorithm, it needs a certain number of views in a certain amount of time. Otherwise, your channel will just sink without a trace. So you can swap around channels. You can reskin channels that are, have been sunsetted. You can, as long as the audience is kind of aligned to the target audience that you want for your new channel, there are ways of sort of repurposing that can be like a smart workaround and introduce audiences to like similar content that's fresh and engaging for them. But yeah, I think all those big brands, they did start from scratch. They had to start from somewhere, and they grew slowly but surely. And I think the trouble is with YouTube, there is a big expectation. You launch something, you expect it to blow up. And if it doesn't immediately, you've got to answer to people and you've got to sort of rationalize why that is. So yeah, there's managing expectations as well that comes into it.
Yeah, I'd also add to that, I don't think not all genres are equal. So like we launched our true crime channel, and that has managed to sort of pick up traction from day zero. But also part of our strategy is about bringing brands in from the other side of our business into the YouTube space and potentially into our own channels. But that's not going to happen on the true crime channel very easily anyway. And so then we're looking at, well, what are the brand safe channels that we can launch, own and operate? And that's significantly harder. There's the balance between the two. If you've got this editorially strong content, but actually the growth in the other side of where we want to be bringing brands in and potentially doing original content with brands on our own channels, they don't always marry up perfectly.
Well, so I think as well, there's an expectation of monetization that, especially on the corporate side, people might have like, oh, when is this going to start wiping its own face? Is that even a saying? Paying for itself, but also like how quickly will it get traction? Because people look at YouTube as this big kind of organic haven, which it is, and people have built huge organic communities. But like KSI has been on YouTube since before me, and Mr. Beast was making videos years and years and years ago when no one was watching, and they can afford to be patient because they're not a corporation. They're a bedroom business, and they're probably not even a business until a very short period of their lifetime on YouTube. So, having a 10-year timeline of expectation to grow a channel is much more realistic than all right, well, we're going to start a parenting advice channel from scratch and expect it to blow up overnight, when you're competing with all of the other parenting advice channels that have no cost. It's just a mum in her house.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think just building on that, what I've seen is, your top performing video of the month isn't going to be the video that you launched that month. It could be a video from a year ago, 5 years ago. How long has your channel been running? So there is a life cycle of videos, and videos can come back, especially if there's a cultural seasonal moment or something that kicks off, and you can see successes in surprising ways. And it's not a linear journey.
Let's hone in for a second, and let's assume that we are a brand or a publisher or somebody with an idea that doesn't have the benefit of a back catalogue. What do you think the biggest thing they can do is to optimize their chances and to know when they're ready to launch their idea? What can they do to improve their odds of success?
I think get started quicker than not, because if you must have patience and be realistic, because then you can put stuff out, iterate, and get better and better and better and better. The best way to make a great YouTube video is to make 1,000 videos that suck. You are going to get feedback at some point, but I think ultimately as well, if you've got a boatload of cash, that's really going to help, because then if you're Foot Asylum, you can pay for chunks to come and be in your video that's already got an audience. Like that, something like that is, especially if you can kind of pay them an under-indexed amount of money to kind of influence and marketing. So yeah, I would err on the side of let's not wait to be perfect, because what perfect is, the audience will tell you, not the other way around.
Yeah, and I think like tapping into the community. So look at your channel as not like a one-way broadcast. Think about who it's for. Think about like the audience, and find ways to tap into that community and get your content to them in other ways. Think about like the jumping in points. So there's discoverability features on YouTube, like YouTube Shorts, which clip up really nicely and can go on TikTok, can go on social as a reel, on Instagram. So it's joining up your community in like one big ecosystem, so that, if they didn't see it on YouTube, they'll see it somewhere else. And it's just kind of getting your content out there and finding the people it's going to resonate with, and building that. Like there's a lot of chat about fandoms. It's a very, very big buzzword at the moment, but it is for a reason. And it's it's getting your content to where you're making meaningful connections, because then that will help you to cut through, and then that will help your video be discovered off the back of other similar videos and other creators.
I'd add to that from a production side, well, actually creative and production side, is you want to de-risk any production by creating as many assets as you can, while having a minimum bar for the quality, but it's coming up with creative ideas that are going to generate clips, are going to generate still photos, are going to generate sort of moments behind the scenes that you can, and this goes beyond YouTube, it's like they can go on all platforms. And so when you are justifying the return on investment or the potential slower, longer term play on YouTube, you can point at the clip that got 1 million views on Instagram, and that's worth something. And then it's like you can then keep going. And so but you can't just do that in post-production. The ideas have to lend themselves to that, otherwise it's a fucking nightmare ultimately for a production company to have a shoot day with a list of 50 deliverables. But if you've got an idea that naturally has these moments, and then like in between when we're resetting, you can be pretty clever about it. And actually that's where, yes, there still needs to be an upfront investment, but you can really stretch it. And I think you have to kind of these days, because otherwise you're sort of, it's too risky. And for us, it's like the growth of the business is all about sort of sticking with clients and continually producing content with them.
I always think of that as creativity under constraint, right? And that constraint is efficiency, that you just really have to make every hour of production go as far as you can. I'm really enjoying, by the way, the meta nature of this chat, because this being a pilot episode or something and talking about when it's ready, I've now got the fear. Like, yeah, I've not done half of this.
How many assets? How many assets are you going to get out of this, Kev?
I don't know. You're all very smart. So if the assets are individual opinions, I think we'll be fine.
The good news is, Kevin, you've got boatloads of cash and lots of patience. So you're gonna be fine.
No, I think I'm very much in the just start bucket rather than the must be perfect bucket.
Yeah, I do think sustainability is just such a important point. You know, we started, well, actually before I joined Endemol, there was a big drive to have big influencer-led channels, and a lot of money was put into them, and they grew great. But then when the brand funding falls out of that model, who's paying KSI to fly to USA and do XYZ? Like,
Yeah.
because the YouTube revenues alone are not going to cover that. So it's almost like, do you have a plan to, one, make sure this production of whatever kind it is going to be, you know, sustainable to try and cover its own cost, but also what are the other monetization points you can see coming down the line, that even if we're in the red for a few years, we're playing the big game, which is, you know, we're going to get the lunchbox deal and a pajama deal, and we're going to have, you know, cuddly toys in the stores of Smith's Toys and stuff like that, which some YouTube first brands have now done, you know, with the help of people like Moonbug and stuff. But like, obviously you need to think 10 steps ahead. But again, that's going to require patience, because that does not happen overnight. You know, Blippi was on YouTube forever. Little Baby Bum was a guy making animations in his shed for forever before Moonbug came along and turned them into the behemoths that they are today, you know?
Exactly, and I think it's just letting something just grow and percolate, and you nurture it, and it will grow, you know, like Bluey's YouTube has been around for 6 or 7 years. It's not something that happened overnight either. There was a lot of work that went into that from some brilliant minds, and, you know, it doesn't happen overnight, and yeah, completely agree.
Yeah. So outside of, you know, lunchbox deals and pajama deals, I was going to ask you, Tom, your play is much more of an archive and a content acquisition play, but do you have those things in mind with your channels?
No. Well, you know, we have made original content before. This is not pre-planned. We made an actual film, but really that's not our long-term play. We really are just a volume business. Just like how many millions and millions and millions of views can we get every month on various platforms? Should we be thinking that way? Yeah, probably. The problem is we don't own the IP of virtually anything that we publish, so that's a little bit different, but also that comes with a huge amount of risk. I've just answered my own, you know, problem. I don't own any IP really, so my business is probably less defensible than if I was Coco Melon or whoever it was that owns their own IP. But you know, we thought about it. Do we build our own platform? Do we, you know, buy some software off the shelf and make our own Netflix for B-grade movies and stuff like that? It's possible, but then I just think of the marketing cost of something like that, and it's why I no longer got any hair. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend my business model necessarily, but like we're deep enough in the trenches now that we have some defense.
Just, I always enjoyed that you put your money where your mouth was. You know, like you had previously consulted on this with lots of people, and then you're like, actually, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm going to launch. What convinced you when you made this choice of when it was ready to launch? And in your case, you weren't piloting, you were acquiring. But when did you think, okay, I'm ready, I can do this? And if you looked back, second question, did you get that right?
Well, I would definitely say we got it right, because I'm still here 7 years, 8 years later, and I haven't had to go and get a job. I've had to have the patience. So again, I've had to practice what I preach, because I can remember our first dollar made, and I can remember our first $1,000 month, and then our first $1,000 day, and then our first $100,000 month. And that did not happen in the early years of the channels, the single channel that we had for the most part. What helped was that that wasn't my only job or my only company at that point. So I was doing consulting at the same time because I didn't have the cash flow or the success or the growth that I needed to be able to take that on full time. And I've only actually been full time on Content Rocket for maybe the last 3 and a bit years out of 7. I've got a picture on my phone somewhere of subscriber count of 0 of where we started on that first day with the first channel, and 5 million subscribers later, I'm luckily still not having to get a job.
It's the dream. Someone's dream anyway. Alex, you have seen some pretty explosive growth by contrast on your archive play. So what do you think you got right there?
I think it's something I mentioned earlier. It's the specific genre that you're going into can really lend itself to distinctive and sort of cut through packaging. And the packaging is obviously crucial, whether it's thumbnails, titles, descriptions, but you can't fudge it. Like, it still has to be relevant to the content. So as much as you want to make something seem dramatic and exciting, if the content isn't about that, if that's not what it is, there's no point in doing that. So the channel you're referring to is Grips, which is a true crime channel, which we launched with Rights Booster, and we've really just seen it in sort of 4 months. We have reached monetization. We have managed to get over 2 million views. It's going really well, and we're now looking at what's next. We knew what we wanted to do, which was grow a channel, grow an audience, but we were fairly audience agnostic, which isn't always the case, particularly if we're working with brands or third parties. And where we've landed on the true crime one is with an audience of, I think the majority's over 55, and they're American and they're watching on TV. And so then our CPMs are doing really well. And you're like, okay, that's quite interesting. We're now looking at what's the original content that we can do on that channel. And that is where we're getting into the sort of very relevant conversations that we're having today of like, how much are we going to invest? What are we going to invest in? How much work is there to do? Is it going to pay itself back, or is it about finding a longer term play and generating formats that could live beyond our own channel and have scope elsewhere? But all of the principles we've just discussed about having the patience and the long-term vision are still absolutely relevant, because even though the trajectory is great, the amount we want to invest in that and then launching sort of future channels is going to far outweigh the success, the very early stages of success that we've seen with this channel.
Something that is sort of a through line of the way that you're all talking involves a great degree of like data literacy and financial literacy and so on, which are not necessarily skills that people that have ideas and want to pilot them always have. Emily, has that always been part of your practice, and is there anything that you notice that people don't get right when they're looking through those lenses?
Yeah, I think if it's not something that you are familiar with, managing a channel and launching and growing a channel, you get pretty familiar pretty quickly. And I think actually it's like Tom said, just get it live and just get it launched and see who is watching and see how they're engaging. And then from then you can kind of see, okay, this is what I need to tweak. If you're getting an audience that's not quite the right demographic, you can then tweak your thumbnails and your titles so that you're appealing to a different age. You also get to know when a channel is live, like when are your spikes, where are the high CPM regions that are coming to you, because that's going to boost your monetization. The times in the year where your channel is going to be performing the best, what shifts it in terms of other content on YouTube. You just get a really good sense of your specific channel and how it's performing. And that then leads you to answers to like problem solve, because it's when your channel is not doing what you want it to do, or you're not seeing the results you want to see, that's when you get really good at the data and the analytics and the monetization side. And, you know, YouTube is all about testing and learning. It's always shifting, always changing. New platform features come in and suddenly everything's operating totally differently. And I think, the best people I've worked with on YouTube channels take the approach of there are no egos here and everything is a hypothesis.
I agree with that, and I think there's one kind of super hack that you could use, which is copy other people's homework, so that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Like Little Baby Bum walked so that Coco Melon could run, right? It's the same channel, slightly better animation, but a much bigger, huge behemoth. But they didn't do anything original. It's like, here's something that already works. How can we be inspired by that and make a crap ton of money before everyone else jumps on the bandwagon? How many new kids animation channels have since come after those two? Tons and tons and tons. It's not a really stupid play if you can make the economics work. Because if you're talking about using data, well, there's clearly an audience for this type of content on YouTube because there's already millions of people consuming it every minute.
Also, just building on that, Tom, like copying people's homework is a really good shout for thumbnails, titling. How does your channel look? Is it not performing? Okay, so who is a similar channel or who's pulling in the audience you want to pull in? Look at their thumbnails, look at the titling. How are they dressing it? How are they packaging it up? What are their formats? Are they doing shorts? A mixture of different lengths? Just see how they are setting out their shop window and see if there's anything that you can tweak, because certainly like that, especially companies that have a lot more money, that are automating this, that are using AI technology to test and do A/B testing and all that jazz, it's definitely worth keeping an eye and then trying it on your channel too.
Yeah, I have one thing to add to all of that, because I think it's a great thing that's available because you can see what's working, what's not. But I'd say there's one bit actually, I guess, is slightly contradictory to that, which is you still need to know your why and what you're staying somewhat true to. And for us, it was like building a bit of an image of what a gripped thumbnail is going to look like. And actually, we can then still do everything that you're saying of like what's working, what's not. Is it a big sort of picture, or is it this, or the big text, small text? But actually, we still have a distinctive style. And so you are still building some sort of brand image or sort of loyalty from an audience at the same time as getting the benefits of seeing what's working. Because I think there is a world in which it's just so saturated, and actually the sort of certain channels, they're all sort of get slightly homogenized, and actually you then need someone who's going to go, well, we're going to do it differently. You need to be, at some point, do the thing that then everyone else copies. Like I think you were saying, Emily, like if you're just getting into it and you're just trying to get some sort of cut through or some sort of optimization, yeah, let's just sort of see what's working and start there. But at some point, you're probably going to want to be brave and do the thing and commit to it and see if that can sort of jump you up a bit.
So I was just going to close up. If you had to summarize in a sentence, off the back of this conversation, what you think the biggest piece of advice you would give to somebody as they were trying to evaluate whether it's time to launch, what would it be? Let's hear from Tom first.
For me, I would, if possible, give yourself a realistic timeline, because unless you've got a disproportionate budget to be able to kind of, fasten your pace of growth, time is going to be the only thing really that's going to give you a decent path to growth. So yeah, patience if you can.
The main piece of advice, the main takeaway, I think it's going to be make sure that you know who your audience is, that the content is lining up, and that you're able to package it up in a way that is going to find them. Make sure that you're harnessing that digital ecosystem if you can, and go for the community.
And then my final one would just be, knowing why this YouTube play, because then all of your decisions can waterfall down from that. I think YouTube sometimes gets this sort of slightly mythical, like it's just one thing, and it really isn't. It's a sort of broadcasting platform of all the different sorts of content you could possibly imagine to all the sorts of different people you could possibly imagine. So if you know why you're doing it, you can come up with your own play, your own strategy. And actually it can justify everything from operational decisions through to creative decisions and strategic decisions and all your data, you know, what you're looking for, what you're looking at, your optimization. So have a clear answer as to why you're doing it. If you've got that, get on with it.
This is excellent. I'm enjoying that. We had the time, we had the audience, we had the why. I think we've nailed it. Thank you for helping me do this very meta thing about talking about when to launch a pilot. This now, we'll just do this and then I'll be fine. Cheers.
Thank you, Kev.
Thanks
You're welcome.
guys.
I do a fake goodbye.
Nice one.
Bye.